Hey, Bitcoin and crypto traders, checking back in after a few days off to see the Bitcoin bulls are breaking 50,000 on the back of some new MicroStrategy news. Altcoin bulls continue to hold on well as well. I personally am a bit cautious initiating any swing positions up at these levels. I'll tell you how I'm approaching the market. We'll go over a recent Litecoin trade, and we'll see where we stand in some of the major coins. So first things first, here's the headline: MicroStrategy to issue 600 million more debt to buy more Bitcoin. At this point, they're essentially just the Bitcoin company, and they might have a bit of a problem as far as having an addiction to buying Bitcoin, but it's paid off for them at this point. So the market responded to that bullishly this morning, but couldn't hold those gains. We'll look at that in just a second. I want to look at the dollar because the dollar is always important. Right now, weekly consolidation is underway, and for the next few weeks, the question that we have is, can the dollar bulls confirm a weekly trend change with a higher low and higher high? We would have to hold 89.20 and break 91.60 for that weekly trend change to take place. It would be notable if that were to happen because it would be the first weekly higher low and higher high that we have seen in a very long time. The last time that happened was back in August 2019. So almost a year and a half ago. The S&P 500 matters to me as well. Right now, we're seeing the bulls at the all-time highs, keeping their complete control. And it's important because, in my opinion, with how this market is setting up right now, we will very likely see the broader stock market and the cryptocurrency space hit tops at relatively the same time. And I'm watching for clues in both, but I do believe that they are correlated enough in this bullish environment that that is likely how it's going to play out. No sign of that top at this point. Always watching for it. So Bitcoin. We have this 4-hour resistance that the bulls have been unable to convincingly get above. And even with this break here, we rejected from that resistance line. I was watching this as a rising wedge, and that rising wedge broke bearish. We then had a very significant recovery, and again, a bullish reaction to the news. But I no longer care about this support line. I care about this resistance line as it keeps rejecting the price over the last 8 days at this point. Other than that, we're watching the 15-minute equilibrium for these shorter term time frames. So we've got our high and low on the same candle. Again, tons of volatility. We broke that high and got to 50,600. We then dropped down to 48,500. That's a $2,000 drop very, very quickly. And since then, we've now formed a 15-minute equilibrium. Higher low at 48.7, lower high at 49.60, and here we are coming down to test support. 48.7, 48.5, 48.4. If those levels were to break, we would zoom out and we would scout a 4-hour higher low, anything above $47,051. So a lack of follow through. That's been the story for Bitcoin over the past week of trading. We're getting bull breaks. We're seeing bulls keep their control, but there is a lack of bull follow through. It's just showing a little bit of exhaustion, which has us a bit cautious in the short term. And again, that's one of the reasons why I'm not looking to initiate any swing bullish positions at this point. The daily time frame for Bitcoin, I would say our last higher low was 43,700. We formed another one yesterday, 45,800, and anything above 45,800 keeps the daily uptrend intact. If we lose that support level, we zoom out because weekly consolidation will then very likely be underway, and we know we have tons of space for a weekly higher low, anything above 28,700. The dominance chart. So the dominance chart for Bitcoin is continuing to show us that the altcoins are remaining very strong. The dominance bulls have been unable to change the daily trend. We broke some resistance, but no higher low and higher high follow through. And as long as this is in a daily downtrend, the altcoin bulls are going to continue to outperform Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin hitting all-time highs is not leading to a bull break on this chart, really the only way that this chart is going to go up is if the crypto space drops and the altcoins drop faster than Bitcoin does. That would lead to a bull move on this chart. And with how things are shaping up, if you asked me a week ago, what's the most likely scenario? I would say Bitcoin all-time highs. We would likely see this chart bounce. And we did. There was just zero follow through. This is where we hit that all-time high, saw the bounce, no follow through. So now with that information, I do believe it will be market weakness and the altcoins dropping faster that lead to any notable bull move in the dominance chart. The ETH USD chart, we were watching the 12-hour channel for a very long time. And here's an example of a channel morphing into a couple different patterns. So we had this channel very clear resistance line and a very nice support line where we just continuously kept holding inside this channel for weeks. And it was just resistance, support, back and forth. Then the resistance level stayed in play and support was out of the picture. We didn't hit support since the end of January. So we essentially have gone now at this point 2 weeks with this support level not mattering. So as soon as that happens, what I then do is look for something different. And in this instance, it's shaped up as a rising wedge. So I know this channel still matters to me, and I am going to be watching this support line when it comes back into play, but the rising wedge then took hold, and we, of course, had that bear break and a very significant drop. We dropped down $200 from that high, over 10%. Lack of bear follow-through, absolutely, but these rising wedges are giving us little heads-ups as far as just being cautious. For me, it's been not necessarily sell bullish positions because there's a rising wedge, but certainly don't enter bullish positions when there are rising wedges forming. Wait for the breaks of the rising wedge and then look for oversold bounces. So something that's always in the back of my mind is the fact that ETH has not consolidated on the weekly time frame since 551. There's nothing saying that we have to consolidate on the weekly. Again, it's just another point in favor of I do not like swing entries up at these levels because we've gone 300% since our last weekly consolidation. I will reinitiate swing positions in ETH once we do see that weekly consolidation and we scout a higher low. But until then, that's my criteria. If ETH is not seeing weekly consolidation, I am not establishing a swing position. I am just day trading and playing oversold bounces. And same thing for Bitcoin. My core swing position, I'm just lightening it up in this environment. I sold some in the upper 46,000s. I trimmed a little bit in the upper 48,000s. And I'm just keeping my long-term no-touch position. So that's my anti-FOMO. If I go all cash, aside from that, I know I'm still seeing an increased net worth with the price of Bitcoin and ETH continuing to go up, but I am scaling out. And I don't expect everybody to trade in the same style as me. Again, I currently am at a point in the first 6 weeks of 2021 where between stocks and crypto, I have 150% of my goal of the entire year. So again, I'm just not giving any of that back. I don't care if I miss moves to the upside because I'm already smashing my goals. I'm just turning off my greedy emotion and locking things in to ensure that I don't give any back because I'm very pleased with how this year is going and that's my style. So long-term no touch, scaling out of swing positions, day trade bouncing positions if the opportunity arises, and I will look for re-entering swing positions on weekly consolidation. ETH BTC, daily time frame is confirming this head and shoulders pattern, and that means weekly consolidation is underway. So what do we know about our altcoin BTC pairings? We know if the US dollar pairing is going to be its strongest, the BTC pairing is going to be correlated and doing the same thing. ETH does not have that happening. ETH is seeing weekly consolidation here while we are not seeing weekly consolidation on the US dollar pairing. So that's just a little bit of a red flag that shows us that it's not necessarily in favor comparative to other altcoins that are seeing their correlation between the Bitcoin and US dollar pairings. Again, there's no major red flags here, and we are looking for a weekly higher low to be the result of this pullback, but it just has me a bit cautious. I imagine the way I view it is when an altcoin has the US dollar and Bitcoin pairing doing the same thing, breaking out and very correlated, it's almost like it's on a spotlight and everybody in the crypto space is watching it and it's getting attention, it's getting headlines, it's getting a lot of chatter around it. And when that is not the case, a US dollar pairing can still be bullish, but it's not the same thing. And that's where ETH stands right now. LTC USD, solid bull move recently, so I did make a trade here, and we'll go into that in just a second. Looking for a daily higher low, and that's already been set, 186.58. And now we're looking back at resistance, 230.81, with the most important weekly resistance, 251.90. After 251.90, there's a lot of space to the upside, but that is the most important longer-term level at the moment. We're going to continue watching the daily uptrend. Nice bounce right off the daily EMA 12 support, and we would have to fail 230 and break 186 to lose the daily uptrend from here. So, excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. So the trade I made in Litecoin was completely based off of LTC BTC. And I've learned that in this bullish market environment, there are scenarios where I would look at a US dollar chart and it would be too extended for me to want to get into that chart. And I wouldn't be comfortable doing so. If I ignore the US dollar chart and I look at the Bitcoin pairing, there are scenarios where I can, again, in a bullish environment that's very forgiving, I can ignore the US dollar overextended move a bit and play off of the Bitcoin chart. So this was a falling wedge that I was watching for about a week. And on this candle right here, which was 4 days ago, I saw the bull break starting to take shape. And that was a higher low and higher high on the daily. So a confirmed daily trend change for the first time in a few weeks. And that led to me to make an entry in Litecoin at 196. And I posted on Twitter that I was keeping an eye on that falling wedge pattern. So essentially, entered at 196. And again, just knowing how extended the environment is, I start to scale out quickly. I entered at 196. I sold a little bit at 198 just to get a little wiggle room for my break even, maybe 20% at 198. I sold 20% on a break of 200. I sold 20% in the two teens. I sold 20% in the 220s. And then I sold the rest in the low 220s, I believe it was, when it started to look a little bit toppy. And that was just because the hourly time frame was shaping up with a head and shoulders pattern. Big pullback, bull break with zero follow through, higher low. This is where I sold the last of my position, anticipating that hourly lower high. So again, you can look at that trade a number of ways. If I wanted to be a negative mindset, I could look at that trade and say, oh, I started scaling out way too early. I should have held until a 10% move and then started scaling out. Or I could look at it and say, that was a very successful trade. I exited some of my Bitcoin core swing position just before that, and I just rolled it right into Litecoin and made gains that I would have been missing on Bitcoin had I just been sitting in cash. So it was all the LTC BTC chart that led to that entry for me. And then it was the US dollar chart that I used to micromanage a bit in terms of how I was going to scale out. So I'm back all out of Litecoin at this point, knowing that I did not want to sit through daily consolidation. And while that daily consolidation is still healthy at this point, I certainly would not have wanted to sit through a 20% pullback, a little bit less than that. No, it was 20%. 20% pullback from the high of that daily bull move. That's how I'm approaching this crypto space from here. I'll take those trades. Maybe I hold for one night as I'm scaling out, setting my stop levels, but I'm not looking for, a week plus trades at these levels as a bull. So from here, we're looking for LTC BTC to give us a daily high or low. There is a very clear top of resistance just over 0.005 that we need to be keeping an eye on. And the daily uptrend on the US dollar pairing is our guide. Link USD bulls, congrats to a new all-time high, finally getting significant follow-through. We've been hitting all-time highs often, but we hit the all-time high straight into daily consolidation. Here's an example where we hit the all-time high at 28.64, and then we saw 20% of follow-through. So that was a good sign for the bulls. The daily EMA 12 has been a nice guide. Got to be cautious. This is still very thinly traded in the sense that we can pull back. I mean, look at this drop on Link, where in 4 hours, we dropped down 20%. That's very notable. And again, I am not going to allow my positions to drop 20% in 4 hours and give back profits on a very nice first 6 weeks of this year. So the daily time frame is in consolidation mode. First hourly oversold conditions already hit. Again, monster bounce. Backburner trades are still prime time in this bull market. And backburner trades in both stocks and crypto have been such a massive amount of my gains and the trade styles that I am taking over the last 6 months. And I will continue to do that until they stop working. So now we're going to be watching for first 4-hour oversold conditions, which are not close to happening. I'm watching a 12-hour equilibrium. No, I don't like that. Let's go 6-hour equilibrium. So all-time high, low of the dump, lower high, and now we're scouting a higher low compared to 2750. So essentially just watching for this very volatile range. We know what happens after extreme volatility. We look for equilibriums to be the most likely scenario. So we're scouting that higher low compared to 2750 and still 10% of space to work with, just under that, to try and find that higher low. The Link BTC pairing rejected from resistance. So the weekly time frame set a higher low, tried to see continuation, and is failing to do so at this point. So still keeping an eye on it. It's looking for a daily higher low, just like Link is. And you can see the last 5 days, 2 big green days, 2 days of pullback, 1 with a big long lower wick, and we're on our 3rd day of pullback. 2 big green days, same thing. So we can see that the correlation between the US dollar and the Bitcoin pairing synced up over the last 5 days when the Link bulls made their move. Watch for those correlations to sync up. They are great clues that strength, again, it's a spotlight. Link just had a big spotlight shine on it when that move took place and when those correlations synced up. BNB USDT, all-time high, massive run. We were waiting for months and months for this Bitcoin pairing chart to get its act together, and it finally did in a huge way. So congrats to the bulls that got this massive follow through. We're now looking for a daily higher low with tons of space. EMA 12 has not been tested yet. Hourly oversold bounce here as well. Very nice. Now we're watching 4-hour oversold conditions. Again, once the hourly oversold is used up, if we don't see a new all-time high as almost a reset to reset the back burner trade as a viable trade, we then have to wait for first 4-hour oversold if we're going to have a very high probability bounce setup. So we would have to see a break of 118 and a drop down for 4-hour oversold conditions and daily EMA 12 support being tested for the next back burner trade in this current setup. Obviously, bulls would love for that to not happen and not need first hour oversold to keep control. And a daily inside bar is currently forming today, and that's likely going to remain the case with 7.5 hours left to go and a wide range yesterday. And if the inside bar were to break bullish tomorrow, our new daily higher low would be set at 118. And the Bitcoin pairing is doing the same thing. They are still correlated. And again, it was this 2-day monster move on February 9th that kicked things off in a very big way, where we ran essentially 60+% in under 2 days. Spotlight. That's the noise a spotlight makes. ADA, USDT, very similar to Binance. Big, massive move up, running to the highs. But again, big pullback from 98 cents. We dropped down to 68 cents. That's a 30% pullback or so. So now we're watching for a lower high. This is the 12-hour chart. So I'm expecting a 12-hour lower high compared to 98 as the most likely scenario. Then we'll scout the higher low compared to 68. And it's looking a lot like Link. Is it Link? So it's looking a lot like Link in that regard. And it's, again, we use the 6-hour time frame for a bit more detail on Link, but very similar. And watching to see if ADA is going to give us that lower high as well. Barely clinging on to this EMA 12 on the 12-hour time frame, but still doing so. And again, its Bitcoin pairing is also looking for a daily higher low. Got to be cautious of a head and shoulders forming here. And again, if we were to see a head and shoulders form and a bear break on this Bitcoin pairing before seeing any weakness in the US dollar pairing, it can act as a canary in the coal mine and give us a little bit of a heads up that, hey, we might be seeing some bull strength leaving. We are seeing weakness comparative to Bitcoin. The spotlight is fading, and that's not the case at the moment, but that's what we're watching for on every altcoin. Once you gain that spotlight, we're watching for the correlation between the Bitcoin and the US dollar pairing to weaken and shift to show us spotlight is fading. So congrats to all the bulls. There's no major red flags whatsoever in the cryptocurrency space at this point. We're continuing to watch the broader market and the implications that it has on the crypto space. Again, we had just 1 day weakness here on SPY last week, and during this drop, we saw correlations between metals, crypto, the MJ sector, stocks, everything synced up. A tiny bit of fear, everything starts correlating. So if we see any fear in the broader market, I absolutely expect Bitcoin to drop in correlation with it. Maybe it'll drop less. Maybe its correlation will be short-lived and only last for, 4 or 5 hours. But we have to be constantly monitoring that correlation because, in my opinion, it will be a short-term driving force as far as how long can these bulls keep control, when is the next time we're going to see weekly consolidation, and questions along those lines. So for me personally, I am waiting for 4-hour oversold conditions. You better believe I'll be playing those bounces. We'll see if there's any day trade opportunities that I like. There was just a nice bottom fish on Bitcoin. We had 48.4, 48.5 support, and we dropped down for an hour and a half There was a bottom fish here. I think I posted that in the chat room. But anyways, there was a bottom fish. Yeah. So there's a bottom fish to be watching for. And again, it's not a huge high probability setup, but it's enough where it's a low risk, decent reward opportunity. You know, if I make an entry at 48,800 and I put my stop under 48.4, I'm risking $450, let's say, and then the bounce makes its way all the way up to an $800 bounce. So there are still day trades out there, even if we don't get these first back burner oversold conditions. But I am personally in a very patient mindset. And again, no FOMO whatsoever due to a lack of greed with how wonderful the year has started. Establish your game plans. Establish whether you will sit through weekly consolidation. Are you going to scale out into strength? Are you going to wait for key support levels? We are still seeing bear breaks leading to big bounces. The 4-hour bear break on Bitcoin on this rising wedge ended up bouncing to a new all-time high and a 10% move, 9% move very shortly after. So I did stop out of some of my core swing position on this move, and that's just the trademark of a bull market. There will be one time where that does not happen and the top is hit, and next thing you know, we're down 30% from the all-time high, and it seems like we're not going to get back to that anytime soon. But we are currently still in the market environment where bear breaks are for buying and essentially bull breaks are for selling over the last 8 days or so. That's essentially what the best plays have been for Bitcoin. Sell bull breaks and buy bear breaks. And that will not always be the case. Just establish your game plan. Long story short. So I went to Mexico for a few days. Got sick literally day one. Fortunately not COVID. Was very careful about all that stuff. But it was a reminder for me because I have been working 7 days a week for 5.5 years at this point and just wearing my body into the ground. And this was a vacation where I was going to take time off of work, but I was going to be drinking every day out on the beach and doing all that stuff. And my body said, nope, you're going to detox. You're going to lay in bed. You're not going to do much of anything. And it really was just my body ensuring that it was a totalitarian break. Not just, a break from looking at the screens, but my whole body needed a break from essentially just working too much. So pay attention to yourself, your psychology, check in with yourself, your physical, what is your body telling you? What is your psychology telling you? Observe it from a third-party perspective, and you can gain a lot of insight because your body is constantly trying to tell you things, and it's up to you to initiate the communication channels between your brain and your body to be able to understand them. Western medicine sometimes does not help with that. You get a rash consistently and you go and they give you steroid cream. I want to know what's causing that rash. Is it a food that I'm eating? Most often, that's probably the answer. So it's up to you to be very observant and establish those communication channels. I hope you are well. Don't forget to do good things out there, and we will certainly see you soon.